Hello comrades and peers. After a long break, today another after action report. This follows up to the campaign events of 1809. It is April 26, 1809, and the Austrian army is heading east across the Inn. Napoleon had hoped for a decisive battle in the Amping area, but the enemy had eluded him. The scenario is based on an after-action report that I downloaded many years ago. Here too, the withdrawal from 1809 was replayed for a campaign using Chaco rules. I had been looking forward to recreate this scenario for a long time and converted it into a 200-point game of Battaile Empire for this report. The deployment also corresponds to the scenario template. I only assigned the Austrian hussars to the reserve. During the game, I will explain certain rules that influence the course of the events. Have fun! General Saint-Hilaire was given the task of securing the crossing near Mühldorf. When he reached the hills in front of the city around midday, with 2 brigades and a cavalry escort, he found that they were already occupied. He had encountered the rearguard of the Austrian troops under Field Marshal Vincent. His job was to keep the French away from the inn until nightfall. For this purpose, he had 2 infantry brigades, a cavalry brigade, and a Landwehr reserve at his disposal. These had taken up position west of the small town of Mittel Schlossburg and, flanked by heavily wooded hills, blocked the path to the inn. In order not to waste any time, General Saint-Hilaire did not wait for a 2nd brigade to arrive, but instead deployed immediately. He sent the Stubbenar's infantry brigade against the hill to the right of the road, while the cavalry was to threaten the left hill until reinforcement arrived. Battaile Empire works with orders that limit the action of the units. In this case, both the French units had the engage order. All Austrian units have the hold order. Only the Landwehr, supplemented by the Stippsitz hussars, have the reserve order. Orders can be changed by the commander at the beginning of a round. A test shows whether it will be implemented in this or the next round. The French advance against the enemy at a rapid pace under artillery fire. At around 2 o'clock, Lorenz's brigade reached the battlefield and advanced behind the cavalry screen. Marshal Oudinot's son-in-law commands a mix of light and line infantry, but without artillery. A unit of Austrians had now formed a square to protect themselves from the attacking cavalry. The cavalry commander responded by moving his horse artillery into position. On the French right flank, the troops had almost reached the hill, and parts of the 72nd Line Infantry were under grapeshot fire. At around 3 o'clock, General de Stappenrath received the order from General Saint-Hilaire to storm the right hill. The attack columns charge up the hill. The opening cannonade can disrupt the enemy on the ridge, greatly increasing the chances of success. But the 72nd right flank was thrown into disarray. by further grapeshot fire and broke off the attack. Nevertheless, the French managed to beat Benjovsky's 31st regiment and drive them off the hill. Driven by that success, they charged forward into a battalion of conscripts, who unexpectedly stand up to the enemy. The French must draw back to the ridge. A great success for the French, which was further strengthened by the further retreat of the Splenier regiment after a firefight with the 105th Linie. In these rules, when attacked by musket fire, the enemy can return fire at the same time as the attacker. In the so-called firefights, the loser, and if successful, the winner, must check the morale of their troops or fall back in disorder. But the Austrians were prepared. Field Marshal Vincent had already ordered his chevaulegers to counterattack in order to seize the enemy's flank. On the left, the situation is unchanged. The French advance the infantry, but the cavalry only managed to keep the enemy at bay. General Saint-Hilaire now feared the development would jeopardize the success of the Stappenrat's brigade. He therefore gave the cavalry the order to regroup and support the Stappenrat's brigade. Lorenzo's brigade should be sufficient for the upcoming attack on the left hill. The Austrian leader, meanwhile, urged his 6th Chevaulegers regiment to quickly attack the enemy. They also succeeded in overriding and destroying the French right flank. In Battaile Empire, the initiative is resolved according to the hierarchy of orders. When both players have divisions with the same order, they roll for initiative with a d6. A commander can improve the roll with his command points. However, flanking fire from the French artillery threw back the lead attack elements. The 105th Linie stormed the remaining Austrian artillery position on the hill and brought it under their control. Meanwhile, on the edge of the left hill, the Austrian square broke under enemy fire and fled up the hill to safety. Field Marshal Vincent himself took command of the Stripsitz Hussars and moved into position to intercept the French cavalry. In further response, Vincent ordered the reserves to support Hofmeister's brigade on the right hill. The French should definitely be repelled there. There, the 105th Linie began a second assault on the conscripts to drive them from the foot of the hill, this time with more success. But minutes later, General de Stappenrat was seriously injured in a firefight with the Splenier regiment, and the left flank of the 105th Linie was also routed. Additionally threatened by the cavalry in the rear, the situation threatened to tip over for the French. The exchange of fire at the bottom of the left hill ended in a draw. The French cavalry, as well as the Austrian reserves, also had problems getting their troops into position in the chaos of the battle. Again, Vincent, the Austrian commander, sent up an adjutant to the cavalry commander to urge him to attack the hill. As ordered, the chevalier stormed the hill into the disorganized remnants of the 72nd Ligne. But luck didn't come their way. They were repelled and then scattered across the battlefield. The remnants of the 105th continued to charge after the remnants of the conscripts and completely destroyed their battalion. But the remaining Austrians on the right hill were already gathering their troops, and the reserves were also approaching. General Saint-Hilaire ordered the cavalry to advance in the center to relieve some pressure from the troops on the right hill. But they had difficulty getting into position on the gathering twilight. The firefight continued on the left hill. Part of the Kärntner regiment also fled behind their own lines. But the Deutschmeister regiment still held the heights. As dusk began to fall, General des Staubenrat's representative decided to retreat. The troops were too exhausted to withstand the advancing Austrians. The attempt to make progress on the left hill also failed, as this time a battalion of the 57th Ligne withdrew from the firefight. The Austrians remained firmly in control of the hill. Field Marshal Vincent had thus successfully fulfilled his task of holding out until the night. But at what costs? There were 5 victory points for each hill. The Austrians scored 20 points through inflicted losses and held a hill. This results in 25 victory points. The second hill remained contested. The French scored 29 victory points. This makes a difference of 4 points, which corresponds to a draw. But for the Austrians, a success for their campaign. I hope you enjoyed this retelling. If you are interested in the rules used, there should be a link to a review at the bottom right. And excuse me the somewhat mediocre lighting. A problem of the season. Till then, and take care.